She was shaking in a stranger's barn, a kitchen knife in her frozen hand, blood dripping onto the hay. 3 days running. 3 days since she watched her husband crack a 16-year-old girl's head against the fireplace. 3 days since he looked at her with those cold eyes and said, "You're next." Clara May had 2 choices that night: freeze to death in a Wyoming blizzard, or trust the stranger with the rifle pointed at her hiding spot. What she didn't know, her husband had already sent bounty hunters. He'd already bought a judge, and he'd already signed a murder warrant with her name on it. But Vernon Hatch made one fatal mistake. He underestimated a woman who had nothing left to lose. This story will show you that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and fighting anyway. It's proof that even when the whole world is against you, one moment of bravery can change everything. If you believe every woman deserves a second chance at life, hit that subscribe button and stay until the end. Trust me, the ending will leave you breathless. The knife was shaken in Clara's hand as she pushed her back against a wooden stall. Her breath came out in white puffs. Her fingers were so numb she could hardly feel the handle, but she held on tight. She had to. It had been 3 days since she fled her house in St. Louis. 3 days since she saw her husband Vernon hit the servant girl, Mary Ellen, so hard the girl's head cracked against the fireplace. 3 days since Vernon had turned those cold eyes on her and said, "You're next if you ever think about leaving." She left that night. Now, it looked like she would die in a stranger's barn in the middle of Wyoming. And maybe that was still better than going home. Clara heard the farmhouse door slam shut. Heavy boots started crunching through the snow, coming straight for her. She squeezed the knife handle harder. The men Vernon sent had found her trail twice before, but she'd lost them in the mountains. But Vernon Hatch had money, and money buys men who find things and don't ask questions. The barn door swung open wide. A tall, lean man with grayin hair stood against the winter sky, a rifle in his hand. He just stood there, his eyes scanning the shadows. Clara held her breath. "I know you're in here," the man said, his voice low and calm. "Saw your tracks in the snow. They lead right to my barn." Clara flattened herself against the wood. Her heart was pounding so loud she was sure he could hear it. "I ain't looking for trouble," the man went on, taking one step inside. "But this is my place, and I have a right to know who's bleeding in it." "Bleeding?" Clara glanced down. The cut on her arm from some barbed wire had bled through her sleeve. A line of red drops led him right to her. Stupid and careless, just like Vernon always said. "Come on out," the man said. "I can see you shaking from here." Clara stayed put. The man let out a sigh. He slowly lowered the rifle and leaned it against the wall. Then he held up both his hands. "Name's Josiah Mercer. This here is my land. Lived here 12 years, and I've never hurt nobody that didn't have it coming." He paused. "You don't look like you have it coming." Clara's voice was just a dry whisper. "How would you know?" Josiah tilted his head. "Because folks who deserve a hurtin' don't usually drag themselves through a blizzard wearing a torn dress and carrying a kitchen knife." She flinched. He'd seen the knife. "I'm going to come a little closer now," Josiah said softly. "Not to take that blade. Just to see how bad you're hurt. Is that all right?" Clara didn't say a word, but she didn't bolt. Josiah moved toward her slow, like you'd approach a spooked animal. He stopped about 5 feet away. His eyes were brown and tired, and they took in her face, her arm, and the blood on the hay. "You've been running for a while," he said. It wasn't a question. Clara nodded. "Someone chasing you?" She nodded again. Josiah let out a long breath. "Husband." Clara's knuckles went white on the knife handle. That was all the answer he needed. Josiah crouched down, keeping his distance. "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Can you do that?" Clara just stared. "Did you kill him?" Josiah asked. "The husband?" "No." The word was bitter. "I should have, but no." Josiah watched her face for a long moment, then gave a single nod. "All right," he said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're gonna let me fix that arm before you bleed out in my hay. Then you're coming inside to get warm and eat. After that, we'll figure out the rest." Clara shook her head. "I can't. They'll find me. They'll—" Josiah's voice cut through her fear, steady as a rock. "Look outside. You see that snow? Nothing is moving in that storm tonight. Not man nor beast. You've got till morning before anyone finds anything." Clara looked past him. The snow was falling thick and sideways now. "So right now," Josiah said, "you got a choice. You can stay out here and freeze to death, or you can trust a stranger for one night." He paused. "I know which one I'd choose." Clara's grip on the knife finally loosened. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help me?" Josiah stood up. "Because I've seen what happens when nobody helps. And I'm too old to pretend I didn't see you here." He turned and walked back toward the door, picking up his rifle as he went. "Door's open," he said over his shoulder. "Come on in when you're ready, or don't. It's your choice." Then he was gone, back out in the blizzard. Clara sat there, the cold sinking deep into her bones. Everything Vernon had ever taught her screamed that kindness was a trap, and men couldn't be trusted. But she couldn't run another step. Her body was given out. She made her choice. The little farmhouse was warm. A fire was going in the fireplace, and the whole place smelled like coffee. Clara stood right inside the door, dripping snow on the floorboards, the knife still up her sleeve. Josiah didn't say a thing about it. He just pointed a thumb at a chair by the fire. "Sit." Clara sat. He went into another room and came back with bandages, a bottle of whiskey, and a clean shirt big enough for two of her. "Arm," he said. Clara hesitated, then slowly pushed up her torn sleeve. The cut was deep and angry-looking. Josiah didn't even flinch. He just poured whiskey right over the wound. Clara hissed and grabbed the arms of the chair so hard her knuckles turned white. "Hurts," Josiah said simply. "But it'll keep you from losing the arm." He wrapped it up with quick, practiced hands. When he was done, he stepped away. "You got a name?" he asked. She paused. A name was a dangerous thing. "Clara," she finally said. "Clara May." Josiah nodded. "Clara May, that's a fine name." He went to the stove and poured her a tin cup of coffee. "You hungry?" Her stomach growled loud enough to answer for her. A small smile almost touched Josiah's lips. "Figured as much." He set the coffee down and then ladled some stew into a bowl. The smell nearly made Clara faint. "Eat slow," he said, "or you'll make yourself sick." Clara picked up the spoon with a trembling hand. The first spoonful was so good she thought she might cry. Josiah sat across from her, his own coffee untouched, just watching her with those quiet eyes. "How long since you've eaten?" he asked. 3 days. And before that? Clara's spoon stopped. "He didn't like me eating much, said I was getting heavy." Josiah's jaw got tight, but he didn't say a word. Clara ate, the only sounds being the crackle of the fire and the wind howling outside. When the bowl was clean, she set it down. "You want to know, don't you?" she said. "Why I ran. Only if you want to tell me." Clara warmed her hands on the coffee cup. "My father sold me when I was 18, she said, her voice low. "They called it a marriage, but he sold me. He owed gambling debts to a man named Vernon Hatch. Vernon said he'd forgive the debt for me." She stared down into her cup. "So he did." Josiah was still silent. "Vernon was a gentleman at first. Bought me fancy dresses and showed me off to his important friends." Clara's voice turned flat. "But then the doors would close, and I learned what he really was." She looked right at Josiah. "For 4 years he told me I was stupid and worthless. 4 years of walking on eggshells, never knowing which man was coming home that night." "He hit you," Josiah stated. "It wasn't a question." Clara nodded. If I didn't smile right, if dinner was cold, he broke my wrist one time because I burned his bread. And nobody helped you. Who was going to help? He's one of the richest men in St. Louis. Owns judges and politicians. Who would believe a nobody girl from Missouri? Josiah's hands balled into fists on the table, but his voice stayed level. What made you finally run? Clara's face crumpled. Mary Ellen, she whispered. She was a servant girl, just 16 years old. Only been with us 2 months. She took a shaky breath. Vernon said she stole a silver spoon. I knew he hadn't, but that just did not matter. He was liquored up and mad, and he needed a target. Clara's voice got real low. He hit her so hard her head cracked against the fireplace. She said it sounded like a busted watermelon. Clara shut her eyes tight. She was still taking breaths when I ran. I just do not know if she's alive. Josiah let out a long, slow breath. And you lit out. I grabbed money from his desk and I took his best horse. I rode west as hard as I could. He is coming for me. Not for love, he does not know that word. He is coming because he sees me as his property and nobody takes what belongs to Vernon Hatch. He sent bounty hunters, 3 of them. I keep losing them, but they always find me again. Josiah leaned back, his face like stone. How far behind? A day. Maybe less. You ought to send me on my way, Clara said. If they find me here, they will bring you nothing but trouble. They will hurt you too. Josiah sat quiet for a good long while. Then he finally spoke. 12 years back, I had a wife and a little girl. Sarah was 32. Emma was 7. He took a breath. A bad fever swept through that winter. Took 'em both inside of a week. Clara just looked at him. I was not here when it happened, Josiah went on. I was out pushing cattle. By the time I made it home, they were already in the ground. His voice was steady, but his eyes told a different story. I spent years thinking on what I could have done, what I should have done if I'd been home. He looked straight at Clara. For 12 years, I've been waiting for a chance to be in the right place when it mattered. I am not sending you anywhere. Clara felt a lump form in her throat. You do not even know me. I know enough, Josiah said, standing up. I know the people who should have kept you safe are the ones who hurt you. And I know you found the nerve to run when you had no other choice. And you are sitting here with a knife up your sleeve ready for a fight. That tells me plenty. Tells me everything I need to know about who you are, Clara May. Clara's hand went right to her sleeve where the blade was tucked away. She thought she had been so careful. You can keep it, Josiah said. If it makes you feel safer, you hold on to it. But you will not be needing it in this house. Clara slowly pulled the knife out and laid it on the table. Josiah gave a nod. There is a room back there. It was my daughter's. It gets cold, but the blankets are thick. Get some rest. We will sort the rest out come morning. Clara stood up, her legs feeling like jelly. Why are you doing all this? Josiah thought on it for a second. Because I have lived with ghosts for 12 years, he said. And maybe I am just tired of being the kind of man who stands by and watches. He turned back to the fire. Good night, Clara. She stood there a moment, the warmth of the house seeping into her. The knife felt a world away. Good night, she whispered. Mr. Mercer, just Josiah. She nodded and went to the back room. The bed was small and the mattress was thin, but it was the softest thing she had laid on in 4 long years. Clara curled up under the blankets and just listened to the storm howl. For the first time in forever, she fell asleep without fear. The morning was quiet and gray. The storm had left the whole world covered in a blanket of white. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a second, her heart jumped into her throat, thinking she was back in St. Louis. Then she remembered. She got dressed and went out to the main room. Josiah was at the stove, scooping eggs onto a plate. He looked over at her. You snore, he said, like a train coming through. But his voice was gentle. Sit down and eat. The plate he gave her had more food than Vernon would have let her eat in a whole week, Josiah said, like he could read her mind. You will need your strength. Clara froze, her fork halfway up. For what? Josiah sat down across from her. Those fellas tracking you. The storm gave us some time, but they will be here soon enough, so I should go. No! Josiah's voice was like iron. You should stay. We should get ready. Clara shook her head. You cannot fight 3 bounty hunters. I have faced worse odds. Not for a stranger. You are not a stranger, Josiah said, picking up his coffee cup. You are somebody who needs a hand. That is all that matters. Clara just stared at him. Why do you care so much? Josiah was quiet for a bit. Because when my Sarah took sick, I prayed for someone to help, he said. A doctor, a neighbor, anybody. But nobody came. He looked at Clara, his eyes hard. I cannot change what happened to her, but I can sure as heck make sure it does not happen to you. Clara put her fork down. I do not know how to thank you. Do not thank me. Yet. Josiah stood. We got work to do. First, you are going to learn to shoot. Clara's eyes got wide. Shoot? You cannot face what is coming with a little kitchen knife, Clara May. Josiah went to a cabinet and took out a revolver. It was old, but clean. Time you learn to look after yourself. He placed the heavy gun on the table in front of her. Clara looked down at it. She had never even held a gun before. Vernon said ladies had no business with firearms. She picked it up. It was heavier than she imagined. Good, Josiah said. Now let us go outside. We have a few hours before that snow is fit to travel on. Let us make 'em count. The lessons began behind the barn. Josiah had set up some old tin cans on a fence rail. Clara's first shot missed by 10 feet. The second one was even worse. You are flinching, Josiah told her. You are closing your eyes right before you shoot. I cannot help it. Yes, you can. Just look at the can. Breathe out slow. Squeeze the trigger. Do not pull it. Clara tried again. The bullet hit the fence post just inches from the can. Better, Josiah said. They stayed out there for 2 hours. By the time they finished, Clara could hit a can 3 times out of 5. Her shoulder was sore and her ears were ringing, but something deep inside her felt different. She could fight. For the first time in 4 years, she could actually fight back. They were heading to the house when Clara heard it. Hoofbeats. Faint, but getting closer. Josiah heard them too. His hand went to the rifle on his back. Inside, he said. Now! Clara ran. Josiah followed, his eyes scanning the snowy hills. Through the window, they saw 3 riders coming over the rise. That is them, Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Josiah watched them. The big one is Silas Cutter. The one with the scar is Emmett. The third one, they call him Quiet Tom. Josiah almost cracked a smile. Never trust a man named something like that. Clara did not smile. What are we going to do? Josiah turned from the window. You will stay in here. Do not come out for any reason. I can help. You can help me by staying alive. He picked up his rifle. I am just going to go have a little talk with them. Josiah. He stopped at the door, looking back at her. I have waited 12 years to make a stand for somebody worth defending, he said. Do not you take that from me. Then he stepped out into the bright, cold morning. Clara stood at the window, clutching the revolver, her heart hammering against her ribs. She watched as the 3 riders slowly approached the man who had given her a second chance. The conversation was about to start. Silas Cutter spoke first, Josiah Mercer. He said the name like he knew it. Heard about you. War hero, lost his family, keeps to himself. Josiah stood about 10 feet from his porch, that rifle held loose in his arms. It was not aimed. Not yet. You heard right, Josiah said. Now, state your business, Josiah said, his voice flat. Silas offered a smile that held no warmth. We are searching for a woman. About 22 years old, ran from her husband in St. Louis 3 weeks ago. She stole a horse and money. Have not seen anyone like that. A man named Emmett let out a harsh laugh. That is hard to believe, old man. seeing as her tracks go right into your barn." Josiah did not react. "Snow can play tricks on the eyes." Silas leaned forward. "Let me be plain. The woman is the legal property of Vernon Hatch. We take her back, and this all ends peacefully." He shrugged. "Her feelings on the matter are not important. The law is the law." Inside the house, Clara's hands shook as she held the revolver. Through the thin walls, she heard Josiah's cold, clear voice. "I will tell you what I told the last man, who stepped onto my land without an invitation. You can water your horses. Then you will leave. You are not welcome to search my property or to question my word." Emmett's hand drifted toward his gun. "Maybe we do not need to be welcome." "Emmett," Silas warned sharply, but the man was already getting off his horse. "I am tired of this chase. We are going in to get her." Josiah raised his rifle in one smooth motion. "You take one more step, and I will put a hole through you." Emmett stopped cold. Silas dismounted carefully, his hands in plain sight. "Mr. Mercer, I admire a man who protects a lady, but you do not understand who you are dealing with." "I understand enough," Josiah said. Silas took a step closer. "Did she tell you about Mary Ellen Porter, a 16-year-old servant girl found dead the morning Clara disappeared? Her head was crushed against the fireplace." Clara's breath caught in her throat. Josiah's face remained a mask of stone. "What about her?" Silas spoke smoothly. "The law says Clara killed her before she fled. This is not a simple runaway wife, Mr. Mercer. You are hiding a murderer." Inside, Clara pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting the urge to scream. It was a lie. "That is quite an accusation," Josiah said, his voice dangerously low. "It is not an accusation. It is a fact." Silas produced a folded paper. "I have a warrant here signed by a judge. It is for the arrest of Clara May Hatch for murder." He offered the document, but Josiah did not move to take it. "The warrant says we can bring her in dead or alive. Her husband pays extra for alive, but if you make things difficult—" The third man, Tom, sat his horse in silence, his sharp eyes scanning the house. He noticed a flicker of movement, a shadow behind a curtain. "Let me see the paper," Josiah demanded. After reading it, his jaw tightened. This warrant was signed only 2 days after she left St. Louis. There was no time for a proper investigation. "Money makes justice move quickly," Silas sneered. Josiah folded the document and slid it into his own coat pocket. "Give me back my warrant," Silas said, his smile vanishing. "No!" Emmett's hand shot to his pistol. Josiah's rifle was instantly aimed at Silas's heart. "I can, and I am. Now you will get back on your horses. You will ride out of here and tell your employer that Clara May is not on this land." "She is here!" Emmett snarled. "You saw snow." Josiah's voice was ice. "Nothing more." "You are making a terrible mistake, Mr. Mercer." "It would not be my first." Silas gave a slow nod, then mounted his horse. Emmett followed, his face a mask of fury. Tom, however, hesitated, his gaze locked on the window. "She is in there," he said quietly. "I can see her." Clara pulled back from the curtain, her heart pounding. "You are seeing shadows," Josiah said, not turning his head. "It makes no difference what Tom sees," Silas called out. "We will be back, Mr. Mercer. We will have more men, and the law will be with us." As they rode off, Tom was the last to leave. He looked at Josiah with a strange expression. "You are a good man," he said softly. "But good men are often the first to die in this world." Then he spurred his horse to follow the others. Josiah stood motionless until they vanished over the rise. He lowered the rifle and went inside. Clara met him at the door, her voice cracking. "They are lying. I did not kill Mary Ellen." "I know," Josiah said, setting the rifle down. "How can you possibly know for sure?" He looked directly at her. "I have seen real killers. I know how they act, how they talk. You are not a killer, Clara May. Tears ran down her cheeks. But what if Vernon did something to her? Then he killed her and paid a judge to blame you, Josiah said harshly. A rich man can buy whatever truth he wants. Clara sank into a chair, trembling. What are we going to do? Josiah pulled the warrant from his pocket. We need proof. Something to show what kind of man Vernon Hatch really is. There is always proof, Josiah continued. Every man leaves a trail. Did your husband ever write things down? Business deals? Letters? Clara searched her memory of 4 years of fear. His study, she said suddenly. He kept a private ledger. He told me once it was his insurance, that as long as he had that book, nobody could ever touch him. Josiah's eyes grew sharp. Where is this book now? In his house in St. Louis, locked in his desk. Hope died in her voice, but then a new thought surfaced. He has a partner here in Wyoming, a man named Douglas Crane. Vernon said they both kept records on each other for, as he called it, protection. Josiah went very still. Douglas Crane. I know of him. He is the biggest rancher in this territory, Josiah said, his jaw tight. He has a reputation for taking what he wants. Clara's hope faded again. So we cannot do anything. I did not say that. Josiah walked to the window. I said he is dangerous, not untouchable. A man like that makes enemies. If Hatch is dirty, Crane is dirty too. And crooked men always have someone keeping score of their sins. We cannot just ride to his ranch and ask for his secrets, Clara said. No, Josiah agreed, pulling on his coat. But we can find someone who already knows them. Get your warmest clothes. We are going to town. Clara stared. To town? But those men will be looking for us. Josiah's eyes were hard as flint. We are done hiding. From this moment on, we fight. For the first time in a long time, anger pushed aside Clara's fear. She was tired of being hunted. All right, she said, her voice steady. Let us fight. They rode into Stillwater Creek an hour later. It was a small town where strangers were noticed and people watched them pass. Josiah stopped before a small house with a sign for Martha Jennings, Eggs and Mending. You wait here, he said. He knocked, and the door was opened by a woman of about 60 with sharp, knowing eyes. She looked from Josiah to Clara, then back to Josiah. Josiah Mercer, I have not seen you in 3 months. Now you show up with a strange woman while the whole territory is buzzing about bounty hunters on your land. Josiah, don't you dare Martha me, she said, crossing her arms. What kind of mess have you brought to my home? He looked her straight in the eye. The kind that needs your help. Martha sized him up for a long moment before letting out a tired sigh. Well, get yourselves inside before the whole town starts gossiping. Her little house was warm and a mess of fabric and thread. She cleared a spot for Clara and set a kettle on the stove. All right, Josiah, she ordered. Start talking, and you tell me everything. He laid it all out for her. Clara's husband, her desperate escape, the bounty, and the powerful men who wanted her back. Martha listened, her face unreadable. When he was done, she looked over at Clara. Is this the gospel truth? Clara gave a short nod. Let me see your arms. Clara pulled up her sleeves, showing the faint finger-shaped bruises. Martha's expression turned to stone. I've seen marks like that on women who weren't lucky enough to run. She turned back to Josiah. What do you need from me? Information about Douglas Crane. You've been here longer than dirt. You know all the secrets. Martha snorted. I know enough to write a book, son. And Douglas Crane's been a bad seed since he was a boy. She shook her head in disgust. Does he keep business records? Dealings with partners back east? Oh, he keeps them, she confirmed. Locked up tight in a safe in his study. He loves to brag on it when he's had too much whiskey. Says he's got enough on powerful men to make himself governor. Clara leaned in. Is there any way to get to it? Martha just laughed. That ranch is a fortress, child. Armed men around the clock. Even if you got past them, you'd never get that safe open. There has to be another way, Josiah insisted. Martha went quiet, her mind working. A spark lit her eyes. His bookkeeper. What about him? Douglas Crane can't hardly read his own name. He hired a young man, Samuel Finch, from Philadelphia a couple years back. Quiet fella, handles everything for him. Josiah sat up straighter. You think he would help us? I think he hates Douglas Crane more than a rattler hates a boot, Martha said, lowering her voice. About 6 months ago, Douglas had his men beat Samuel near to death. Said he was looking at his daughter. The girl is only 16. Samuel was just being a gentleman, but Douglas only understands brute force. Clara felt a surge of hope. Where is he now? Right where he's always been, working for Douglas, Martha said with a sigh. The boy has no money and nowhere to go. He's trapped, just like you were. Josiah was already on his feet. Where do I find him? He drinks at the saloon every Thursday. Sits alone at a table in the corner. She glanced out the window. And today's Thursday. Josiah looked at Clara. You stay here, I'll go. But Clara shook her head, her voice finding a new strength. No, I'm going with you. I am done hiding. If Samuel Finch is going to help, he needs to see the person he's helping. He needs to hear it from me. Josiah saw the new resolve in her eyes and gave a slow nod of respect. All right, but you stick close. If it goes sour, you run, you hear me? Clara met his gaze. I hear you. But she knew she was done running. The saloon was thick with smoke and the low hum of conversation. Clara kept her eyes down, following Josiah, feeling every stare. A strange woman in a place like this was bound to get folks talking. Josiah found him right where Martha said he'd be. A thin young man with spectacles and an old yellowed bruise on his jaw sat alone in the corner. Samuel Finch, Josiah said, pulling up a chair without an invitation. Samuel looked up, startled. Can I help you? Maybe, Josiah said quietly. My name is Josiah Mercer. This is Clara. We need to talk about your boss, Douglas Crane. The color drained from Samuel's face. He made a move to get up. I don't know what you're talking about. Sit down. Josiah's voice was soft, but carried the weight of iron. We're not looking for trouble. We just happen to share an enemy. Samuel paused, his eyes flicking from Clara to the door and back again. He slowly lowered himself into the chair. What is it you want? He whispered. I need to know about his dealings with a man named Vernon Hatch, out of St. Louis. A look of fearful recognition crossed Samuel's face. I can't talk about that in here. Then where? Samuel looked around nervously, his hands shaking. Tomorrow at dawn. The old abandoned mill 3 miles north of town. Nobody ever goes there. How do we know you're not setting us up? For the first time, a fire lit Samuel's eyes. Because Douglas Crane took everything from me. Because every single night I wish I had the nerve to end him, because I have been waiting 2 long years for a chance like this. He stood up, dropping a few coins on the table. Dawn, don't be late. Then he turned and walked out. Clara finally let out a breath. Can you trust him? She asked. Josiah watched the door swing shut. No, he said, but I trust his hate. And for now, that's enough. The ride back to the ranch was silent under a sky full of sharp, cold stars. Clara's mind was racing. A murder warrant, a secret-keeping bookkeeper, and a monster named Crane who held the keys to her future. At the farmhouse, Josiah helped her down from her horse. Get some rest, he said gently. Tomorrow is going to be a long one. Clara hesitated. Josiah, she said, making him turn, thank you for believing what I said about Mary Ellen. Josiah was quiet for a beat. "In the war," he said, "I saw good men do awful things. I also saw innocent men punished for another's crime. You learn to see the difference. And you, Clara May, are not a killer." Tears welled in her eyes, but she wouldn't let them fall. "How can you know that?" "Because a killer wouldn't have done what you did for me tonight." Clara looked confused. "What are you talking about?" "When those men were here," Josiah said softly, "when Emmett reached for his pistol, I saw you in the window. You had that revolver up, ready to shoot him to save me." Clara's breath hitched. She hadn't even realized she'd done it. "A woman willing to kill to protect a stranger is not a murderer," Josiah said, meeting her gaze. "That is someone worth fighting for." He turned and walked toward the barn, leaving her standing in the cold. His words settled over her like a warm blanket. She went inside, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't dream of Vernon. She dreamed of being free. But far away, 3 riders were making their own plans. And in St. Louis, Vernon Hatch smiled as he read a telegram. "Found her," he said to the quiet room. At dawn, the air was cold enough to bite. Clara and Josiah rode north, their breath making clouds in the gray light. The old mill stood like a broken skeleton against the trees. Samuel Finch was already there, pacing. He looked like he hadn't slept a wink. "You came," he said, his voice shaky. Josiah swung down from his horse. "We said we would." Samuel's eyes found Clara, and a strange look passed over his face. "It's you," he breathed. "Vernon Hatch's wife." Clara went rigid. "How did you know that?" "I've seen your picture," Samuel said with a bitter tone. "Douglas keeps it in his study. A gift from Vernon. He shows it off, brags about his partner taming a wildcat." The words made Clara feel sick. "Start talking," Josiah said, his voice flat. "What do you know about Hatch?" Samuel shot a nervous look into the trees before he spoke. "They've been partners for 8 years. They move cattle, but it's all a front. They steal from smaller outfits, forge deeds, and bribe anyone they need to. If you get in their way, you disappear." "Those are heavy claims," Josiah said. "Can you prove any of it?" Samuel reached inside his coat and pulled out a small leather-bound journal, his hands trembling. "Every deal, every bribe, every life they've ruined. I've been writing it all down for 2 years, just waiting." Josiah took the book, his jaw tightening as he flipped through the pages. "This is enough to see them both hang." "That's what I'm counting on," Samuel said, his eyes hard as stone. "Douglas nearly killed me for just at his daughter. He took everything from me. I want him to pay for it all." Clara stepped closer. "What about Vernon? What do you know about his time in St. Louis?" Samuel's face softened a bit. "I know he is a pure monster," he said softly. "Douglas, he talks a lot when he has had too much to drink. He told me things about Vernon that would make a man sick. The women, the beatings, the accidents that were no accident." Clara's breath hitched. "What accidents?" Samuel looked away for a second. "Tell me," Clara said. "Please." 2 years before you, Vernon had another wife, a woman named Emily. She died in a house fire." Samuel paused. "But Douglas said Vernon set that fire himself. Said he collected the insurance money and laughed about it later." The world felt like it was tilting under Clara's feet. She knew Vernon was a cruel man. She never imagined he was a killer. "And Mary Ellen, the servant girl?" Samuel shook his head. "I do not know all the details. But I know Vernon sent a wire went to Douglas 3 days ago. It said the girl was dealt with. It also mentioned a witness that needed to be silenced." Josiah moved in closer. "What witness?" "I don't know. The wire didn't say." Samuel glanced at Clara. "But if you were there that night, you saw it happen." "I saw Vernon hit her," Clara whispered. "I saw her go down. I swear I thought she was alive when I ran." "Then you're the witness," Samuel said flatly. "And Vernon is not going to stop until you are dead." Those words just hung in the cold air. Josiah's hand went straight to his rifle. "We need to head back now. Hold on." Samuel caught his arm. "There is more. Douglas got another wire yesterday. Vernon is on his way." Clara felt her blood turn to ice. "What?" "He is coming. He should be here in 2 days, maybe 3. He is bringing men, lawyers, even hired guns. He is not taking any chances." Josiah's face turned to stone. "Why are you telling us all this?" Samuel looked him square in the eye. "Because I want Douglas Crane to fall. The only way that happens is if Vernon Hatch goes down right along with him." He shoved the journal into Josiah's hands. "Use this book. Ruin them both. And when it is all over, you remember who gave you a hand." "What about you?" "I am going to vanish. I have a cousin in California who will take me in." Samuel backed away toward his horse. "But I need some time. 3 days. Can you give me 3 days?" Josiah gave a slow nod. 3 days. Samuel swung up onto his horse. He looked down at Clara one last time. "I am sorry," he said, "for what they did to you, for what they do to all of us." Then he was gone, swallowed by the gray morning light. Clara just stood there, the cold seeping deep into her bones. Her thoughts were racing. Vernon was a killer. He would do it again, and now he was coming for her. Josiah touched her arm. "Clara, we have to go," she nodded, unable to find her voice. They got on their horses and rode hard for the ranch, but they were too late. Smoke was rising from Josiah's land. At first, Clara just saw a dark plume against the pale sky. Her heart stopped. "Josiah!" He was already digging his heels in, racing his horse toward the smoke. Clara was right behind him, fear choking her. The barn was on fire. Flames were climbing up the old wooden walls with a hungry roar. The horses were screaming inside, trapped. Josiah leaped from his horse and sprinted for the barn doors. Clara was on his heels. "The horses!" she yelled. "We have to get them out!" Josiah wrenched the big doors open. Thick, choking smoke billowed out. Inside, she could see the dark shapes of the animals kicking their stalls in a panic. Josiah charged right into the smoke. Clara grabbed a horse blanket, dunked it in the water trough, and wrapped it over her face. Then she followed him inside. The heat was like a furnace. Clara's eyes were burning. Her lungs screamed for clean air. She found the first stall and yanked open the latch. A mare bolted out, almost running her over. "Clara!" Josiah's voice cut through the smoke. "The back stalls!" "I cannot get to them." Clara pushed deeper into the burning barn. The fire was spreading fast now, eating its way across the roof. A heavy beam cracked above her. She found 2 more horses and set them free, slapping their hides to drive them out the door. She turned back for the last one. It was a young gelding, trapped in a corner stall, his eyes wide with terror. Clara wrestled with the rusty latch. It would not budge. She pulled until her hands were raw. "Come on," she screamed. "Come on!" The latch finally broke. The gelding shot past her. Clara turned to run, but the smoke was too thick. She could not see. She could not breathe. Her legs gave out. Then, strong arms were around her, lifting her up, carrying her out of the fire. Josiah's voice was in her ear, ragged with smoke. "I have got you. I have you." They burst out of the barn just as the roof came crashing down behind them. Clara dropped to her knees in the snow, coughing and gasping for air. Josiah collapsed next to her, his face black with soot. They just laid there, breathing the cold air, watching the barn burn to the ground. "They know," Clara finally said. "They know I am here." Josiah nodded, his jaw set tight. This was a warning. "They want us to be scared. It is working." Josiah looked over at her. His eyes were hard, but she saw something else there, too. Determination. "Then we will make them scared," he said. "We take this journal to the marshal. We tell him everything. And we bring Vernon Hatch down before he can lay a hand on you." Clara shook her head. "The marshal is not going to help. You heard Samuel. Vernon has lawyers and politicians. He has people everywhere. Not everyone." Josiah got to his feet. "Marshal Henry Dalton is a hard man, but he is a fair one. He was a friend of my wife's brother. If anyone in this territory is going to listen, it will be him." Clara looked from the burning barn to Josiah. And if he does not? Josiah offered her his hand. Then we find another way. But we do not stop fighting. Not now. Not ever. Clara took his hand and he pulled her up. They rode to town that afternoon. The streets of Stillwater Creek were quiet, but Clara could feel eyes on them from every single window. News had traveled fast. Everyone knew about the fire. Everyone knew about the men hunting a woman on Josiah's land. Marshal Dalton's office was a small building at the end of the main street. Josiah tied up their horses and helped Clara down. "Let me do the talking," he said. "Henry knows me. He will listen." They stepped inside. Henry Dalton sat at a scarred wooden desk cleaning a pistol. He was a big, weathered man with a face that looked like it had seen everything and judged most of it to be wanting. He looked up as they came in. His eyes went from Josiah to Clara, then back. "Josiah Mercer," his voice was flat, "heard about your barn. That is why I am here. I also heard you have got a woman staying with you. A woman some men from back east are looking for." Henry put down his pistol. "A dangerous woman, they say. Killed a servant girl, stole a lot of money, and ran from her husband." Clara's hands balled into fists. Josiah stepped forward. "That is their story. It is not the truth. And what is the truth?" Josiah took out the journal and laid it on the desk. "The truth is that Vernon Hatch is a killer and a thief. His partner, Douglas Crane, has been running dirty business through this territory for years. This journal has the proof of every deal, every bribe, every last crime." Henry did not even touch the journal. He just stared at it. "Where did you get this?" "From Samuel Finch, Douglas Crane's bookkeeper." Something changed in Henry's eyes. "Samuel Finch came to see me 6 months ago. Said some of Crane's men had beat him. Said he had proof of what they were doing." He paused. "I told him to go on back to work and keep his mouth shut." Clara's heart sank. "You did not help him." "I could not help him." Henry's voice was hard as rock. "Douglas Crane owns half the officials in this territory. The other half are too afraid of him to make a move. You think one county marshal can bring down an empire? So you are just going to let them win?" Clara's voice rose with anger. "Let them burn down people's homes, hunt innocent folks, and kill anyone who stands in their way?" Henry met her gaze. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then he let out a long sigh. "No," he said quietly. "I am not." He picked up the journal and opened it. His eyes moved across the pages, his face growing darker with every line he read. "This is real," he said. "All of it. All of it," Josiah said. Henry closed the journal and set it down gently. "Vernon Hatch is coming. I got a wire this morning. He has already crossed into the territory. He will be here by tomorrow night." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. But Henry went on. "He does not know that I have seen this." He tapped the journal. "And he does not know I have been waiting for something just like this for 3 years. Josiah frowned. "What do you mean by that?" Henry stood and walked to the window looking out at the empty street. "My daughter was engaged to a man named Thomas Reed. He was a good, honest man. He had a small ranch east of here, prime land, right where Douglas Crane wanted to run his cattle." He paused. Thomas would not sell. 2 weeks later, he was dead, shot in the back. They called it a robbery. Clara's throat went tight. "I knew it was Crane," Henry said. "I knew it in my gut, but I could not prove a thing. I could not touch him." He turned back to face them. "My daughter never married." "My daughter never. She is 32 years old now, still waiting for a man who has been gone for 8 years. He picked up the journal again. "This is about more than just helping you, Mrs. Hatch. This is about finishing something I started a long, long time ago." Clara stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Then you will help us." Henry the Marshal nodded his head slowly. "I will help you. But we have to do this the right way. Your husband, Vernon Hatch, has more money and lawyers than we can count. If we make one wrong move, he will slip right through our fingers. We have to build a trap he cannot escape. How do we do that? Josiah asked. A hard look came into Henry's eyes. We let him come to us. We let him believe he has already won, and right when he is most confident, we spring the trap. Clara shook her head, panicked. I cannot just sit here and wait for him to find me. I just cannot. You will not be alone, Henry assured her. He walked over to a cabinet and pulled out a deputy's badge, tossing it to Josiah. You have done this work before. Well, consider yourself deputized again. Josiah caught the shiny badge and just stared at it. From this moment on, Henry declared, anyone who comes after Clara May Hatch is interfering with a protected witness in a federal investigation. Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes. Why? Why would you risk so much for me? For the first time, Henry looked directly at her. His weathered face seemed to soften just a little. Because my own daughter is still waiting for justice, he said, and I am tired of watching good people lose while bad men get everything they want. He picked up his hat from the desk. Both of you get a room at the hotel tonight. I will have my deputies watching the building. We will plan our next move in the morning. Then he walked out. Clara and Josiah stood alone in the quiet office. He is going to help, Clara whispered, as if she could not believe it. He is really going to help us. Josiah nodded, but his expression was still troubled. Vernon gets here tomorrow. That does not give us much time at all. It is more time than I had yesterday, Clara said, touching his arm. Josiah, for the first time in 4 long years, I feel like I might actually get through this alive. Josiah looked down at her, his face a mask. You're going to survive, he said with certainty. I promise you that. They stepped outside into the cold evening air. The hotel was just across the dusty street, a simple 2-story building. Josiah paid for 2 rooms with cash and walked Clara to her door. Lock this, he told her, and do not open it for anyone but me. Clara nodded. Where will you be? Right next door if you need anything. I know, she gave him a small, tired smile. Thank you for everything, Josiah. He simply tipped his hat. Try to get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. As he walked to his own room, Clara shut her door and slid the lock into place. She leaned against the solid wood, her heart pounding in her chest. Tomorrow. Vernon would be here tomorrow. She walked to the window and stared out at the empty, snow-dusted street. Her husband was out there somewhere, coming for her, the man who had beaten her and broken her spirit. But she was not alone this time. She had Josiah. She had Marshal Dalton. And she had the proof of all Vernon's crimes. This time, she was not running. She was ready to put up a fight. A sudden knock rattled her door. Clara froze in place. Clara. It was Josiah's voice, low and urgent. Open the door, right now. She quickly unlocked it. Josiah stood in the hallway, his face grim. What is it? Silas Cutter is downstairs in the saloon. He is asking for you by your name. He says he has a message from your husband. A chill went through Clara's entire body. What kind of message? Josiah's jaw was tight. He says Vernon wants to make a deal. If you come back on your own, he promises not to burn this whole town to the ground to get you. Clara's hands began to shake. He has to be bluffing. Maybe, Josiah said, his eyes like cold steel. But Silas brought 20 men with him. They rode in about an hour ago. Henry's deputies are completely outnumbered. The room felt like it was shrinking around her. What are we going to do? Josiah took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. We are going to do what we have been doing, he said. We fight. But first, we need to move. Henry has a place just outside of town, an old cabin deep in the hills. We can hide out there until help arrives. What help? Josiah met her gaze. Henry sent a telegram to the territorial governor. If that journal of yours is real, the governor will send United States Marshals, men that Vernon cannot buy. And if the governor does not believe us? Josiah did not have to answer that question. They slipped out the back door of the hotel into the freezing night. Shouts suddenly erupted from the front of the building. "They have seen us!" Clara gasped. Josiah threw himself into the saddle and pulled Clara up right behind him. "Hold on tight!" They rode hard into the darkness as the sounds of pursuit echoed behind them. Clara held on to Josiah, her heart racing with the galloping horse. The wind was so cold it felt like a knife. And even as they ran for their lives, a new feeling started to grow inside her. It was not fear anymore. It was fury. Vernon had taken everything from her. Now, she was going to take it all back, or she was going to die trying. The cabin appeared like a ghost between the trees. They jumped from the horse and hurried inside. Henry and 2 of his deputies were already there. "They are right behind us," Josiah said. "At least 20 men." Henry calmly checked his rifle. "Let them come. This old cabin has stood up to worse." Clara grabbed a rifle from a rack on the wall. Her hands were perfectly steady now. "Just tell me where you need me," she said. Henry gave her a long look, then nodded. "Take the east window. If anyone comes through that side, you shoot." Clara moved to her post. Outside, the sound of horses grew closer and closer. A voice called out through the dark. "Mercer. I know you are in there. Send the woman out and no one else has to get hurt." Josiah's reply was calm and cold. "Go to hell, Cutter." After a moment of silence, Silas laughed. "Have it your way, then." The first gunshot shattered the window, and the fight for Clara's life began. Glass sprayed across the floor. Clara ducked down, her heart pounding against her ribs. Another bullet tore through the wall just inches from her head. "Clara!" Josiah's voice cut through the noise. "Are you hit?" "No," she managed to say. "I am all right." Henry fired from the front of the cabin, the sound deafening in the small room. One of his deputies yelled as a bullet grazed his arm. "They are spreading out," Henry shouted. "They are trying to get around us." Clara peeked over the edge of the broken window. She could see shadows moving among the trees. There were too many to count. Silas was not charging them. He was surrounding them, cutting off any chance of escape. "We are trapped," said the wounded deputy. He was a young man named Jack, pale with fear. "We are not trapped," Josiah said, his voice even. He reloaded his rifle with steady hands. "We are fortified. There is a big difference." Another round of gunfire slammed into the cabin walls. "How long until we can expect help?" Clara called out. Henry's jaw was set. If the telegram made it through, maybe by morning, maybe longer. "By morning?" Jack's voice cracked. "We will all be dead by morning. Then stop your talking and start shooting," Henry ordered. He moved to a new spot, looking through a crack between the logs. "I see about 15 of them. They are holding back, just waiting for us to run out of bullets." Clara's hands started to tremble. She had only learned to shoot 2 days ago, and now she was supposed to fight off 20 hired guns. "Clara." Josiah was suddenly beside her, crouched down low. His eyes were focused. "Remember what I told you. Breathe. Aim. Squeeze the trigger. I do not know if I can do this." "You can." His voice was firm. "You have survived much worse than this. You can survive this." Clara looked at the man who had pulled her from a blizzard, who had believed her story, who was now risking his own life for her. She gave a small nod. "Good." Josiah moved back to his position. "Now shoot anything that moves out there." Clara raised her rifle to her shoulder and looked through the sight. A man broke from the cover of the trees, running toward the cabin. She fired. The man went down. Clara stared in disbelief. Her first shot. "Good shot," Henry called out. "Keep it up." Her stomach felt sick, but there was no time to think. Another man appeared. She fired and missed. She took another breath, aimed again, and fired. This time, he fell. The next hour was pure chaos. The smell of gunpowder was thick in the air. Clara's shoulder was sore from the rifle's kick. Her ears were ringing, but she just kept reloading and shooting. Jack was the first to get hit badly. A bullet went clean through his shoulder. Henry dragged him to the back of the room and made a bandage from his own shirt. "We are getting low," yelled the other deputy, Cole. "Maybe 30 rounds left between us all." "Make every one of them count," Josiah said. Clara fired her last bullet and reached for more, but her hand found nothing. "I am out," she said, her voice tight. Josiah tossed her his pistol. "You have 6 shots. Do not waste a single one." Then the gunfire from outside seemed to slow down. Clara peeked through the window again. The attackers had moved back into the trees. "They are not shooting anymore," Cole said. Henry's face was grim. "They are just waiting. They know we are almost out of ammunition. They will wait us out, then move in." "What do we do?" Clara asked, her heart pounding. "We wait too," Henry said, checking his rifle one last time. "And we pray that help comes before our luck runs out completely." The silence that followed was terrifying. A deep cold crept into the cabin, finding its way through the bullet holes in the walls. Clara sat with her back to the wood, a pistol resting in her lap. Her body ached, and her mind was racing. "Josiah." Her voice was just a whisper. He looked over at her. "If we do not make it out of this, we are going to make it. But if we do not," she swallowed hard, "I want you to know that these last few days have been the first time in 4 years I have felt like a real person, like I mattered, and that is because of you." Josiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "My wife, Sarah, she used to say that courage was not about being free from fear. It was about being scared to death and still doing the right thing." He met Clara's eyes. "You are the most courageous person I have ever known, Clara May. Whatever happens tonight, you do not ever forget that." Clara's eyes burned with tears she would not let fall. A voice called out from the darkness. "Mercer, I want to talk." Everyone stiffened. Henry moved to the door with his rifle ready. "Say your piece, Cutter. I have got a new offer for you." Silas's voice was calm, almost friendly. "My employer's here now. He wants to have a word with his wife." A cold fear gripped Clara. Vernon. He was right outside. Silas went on, saying, "He is willing to let the rest of you go. All he wants is Clara. Nobody else has to die." Josiah's jaw tightened. "You can go straight to hell. That does not sound very neighborly." A short silence, then, "Maybe you ought to hear what Mr. Hatch has to say." Another voice sliced through the night, smooth and familiar. "Clara, darling, has this not gone on long enough?" Clara felt the air leave her lungs. It was Vernon. His voice wrapped around her like cold chains, dragging her back to all the nightmares. Every harsh word, every sleepless night spent hiding in fear. "Come on out, and I will be merciful," Vernon said. "You stay in there, and every last one of you dies. It is a simple choice." Clara's hands were shaking. She pressed them on her knees, trying to make them stop. "Do not you listen to him," Josiah said in a low voice. "He is just trying to get inside your head." "I know," Clara whispered, "but it is working. You are a whole lot stronger than he is. You have always been stronger than him." Clara looked up at Josiah. She wanted so badly to believe him. "Clara!" Vernon's voice was sharper this time. "My patience is wearing thin. Come out in the next 60 seconds, or I will burn that cabin to the ground with all of you inside." Henry cocked his rifle. "He is bluffing." "He is not," Clara said, her voice empty. "He set a woman on fire once. He told me the story and laughed about it." The silence in the room was heavy. Cole shifted on his feet. "Maybe we should just—" "No." Josiah's voice was like iron. "We do not bargain with killers. But if she goes out, we get to live. She is not going anywhere." Josiah turned to Cole, his eyes burning with anger. "She came to us for help. We gave our word, and that still means something." Cole looked down, his face red with shame. Clara got to her feet slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she made them hold her. "He is right," she said. "I will not let all of you die because of me." "Clara," Josiah began. "No, you listen to me." She turned to look at them all. Josiah, Henry, Cole, and even Jack, who was pale in the corner. "For 4 years I let Vernon run my life. 4 years of being scared, 4 years of being nothing." She picked up the pistol, feeling its solid weight. "I am done being nothing. I am done running." And I am sure as hell done letting that man decide who lives and who dies. She started for the door. Josiah caught her arm. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Going out there?" "No, not to give up." Her eyes met his. "To end this." Josiah just stared at her, his expression changing. Then, "I am going with you." Henry stepped up. "We all are." Clara looked at these men who were willing to die for her. "No," she said firmly. "This is my fight. Vernon came for me, so he is going to get me." She turned back to the door. "Clara." Josiah's voice made her pause. "Whatever happens, I need you to know something." She looked over her shoulder. "You are not alone anymore. You do not ever have to be." Clara gave one sharp nod. Then she opened the door and walked out into the cold. Vernon Hatch stood about 30 feet away with Silas and a dozen armed men beside him. He was dressed perfectly in a dark coat and silk tie, his polished boots somehow clean from the snow. He smiled when he saw her. "There you are, darling. I have missed you." Clara tightened her hand on the pistol. "I am sure you have. Such fire." Vernon shook his head. "That is what I always liked about you, Clara. It made breaking your spirit so much more enjoyable. You never broke me. Oh, did I not?" Vernon stepped closer. "Look at you. You are trembling, hiding behind a bunch of country folk who will be dead before sunrise. You ran halfway across the country, and you still ended up right where I knew you would be. Alone and desperate. I am not begging for a thing." "Not yet." Vernon's smile grew wider. "But you will be." Clara raised the pistol. Silas's men lifted their rifles in response. "Be careful, darling." Vernon's voice was soft, like a snake. "You shoot me, and they will cut you down before you even hit the ground." "That might be true, but you will still be dead." Something shifted in Vernon's eyes. It was not fear, he was too proud for that. It was surprise. This was not the timid girl he remembered. "What in the world happened to you?" he asked. "I woke up." He stared at her, then let out a laugh. "You think a few days with some dirt-poor rancher made you tough? You are the same weak thing I married, and that is all you will ever be. You are wrong." "Am I?" He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "This is a telegram from my lawyers. The murder charge is final. The coroner says you were the last person seen with Mary Ellen Porter. The warrant was signed today." Clara felt sick. "Even if you kill me, you will hang for it. Even if you get away, you will spend your whole life looking over your shoulder. You cannot win, Clara." His words struck her hard. He was right. The murder charge would haunt her forever. "Unless Mary Ellen is not dead." Vernon's smile vanished. "What did you just say?" "I said, she is not dead." Clara's voice gained strength. "I saw her get up and run after you left. It was a complete bluff." But she saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You are lying." "Am I?" "Your paid-off coroner never saw a body, because there was not one to see. If Mary Ellen is alive, your whole plan crumbles." Vernon's face flushed with anger. "And even if she is not," Clara pressed on, "I have a journal detailing every bribe you ever paid, and every man you have ever ruined." Douglas Crane's bookkeeper gave his records to the territorial governor. Vernon froze. "You are bluffing." "Go on and try me." The air was thick with tension. Clara's palms sweated around the pistol. Finally, Vernon spoke, his voice like ice. "Silas, kill every last one of them." As Silas raised his hand, a shot cracked from the trees behind them. Then another. Men yelled and horses cried out in the chaos. "You are surrounded," a voice called out. "This is Marshal Thomas Kane of the Territorial Marshal Service. Throw down your weapons." Clara almost collapsed with relief. They had come. Vernon's face was a mask of pure fury. Marshal Kane rode out from the woods with a dozen men. "Vernon Hatch, you are under arrest for murder and a list of other crimes." In a flash, Vernon grabbed Clara, holding a knife to her throat. "Nobody move," he shrieked. "I will kill her, I swear it." Clara felt the cold steel break her skin. A trickle of blood ran down her neck. "Let her go, Hatch," Marshal Kane said calmly. "There is nowhere to go. I will take my chances, Vernon yelled, dragging her backward. Follow me, and she is dead. But Clara was no longer afraid. She had spent 4 long years living in fear of this man, believing she was nothing. She was Clara May Dawson, and she was finished being his victim. She let her body go limp. The dead weight surprised him, and his grip faltered. In that instant, Clara dropped and twisted free. As Vernon stumbled, a rifle shot echoed through the night. Vernon's eyes shot open. He looked down at the growing red stain on his shirt, and then he collapsed. Clara scrambled backward. She looked up to see Josiah in the doorway, his rifle still smoking. The world stood still for a moment. Then Marshal Kane dismounted and checked the body. "He is dead," the marshal declared. Clara looked at the man who had tormented her for 4 years. In death, he looked small and pathetic, just a dead man. Josiah came to her side and helped her stand. "It is over, Clara." She watched the marshals arrest Silas and his men. "I know," she whispered, finally believing it. The hours that followed were a whirlwind. The rest of the men were arrested, and documents proved the journal's claims. Most importantly, Mary Ellen Porter was found alive, hiding with a neighbor. Vernon had bribed the coroner and invented the murder charge. He was wrong. Clara had escaped, and now she was free. Marshal Kane took her statement right there in the cabin, with Josiah by her side. When they finished, the marshal shook her hand. "Mrs. Hatch." "It is Dawson," Clara corrected him. "Clara May Dawson. I was never truly his wife." Kane nodded. "Miss Dawson, you have been through a terrible ordeal. It is over now. Vernon's estate will be seized, and you are a completely free woman. Free." The word felt foreign and wonderful. "What will you do now?" Kane asked. Clara's eyes found Josiah. He stood, talking with Henry, but turned as if he felt her looking. Their eyes met, and she smiled. "I am going to start a new life," she said, "right here." By sunrise, the marshals were gone, leaving the bullet-riddled cabin behind. It was damaged, but still standing, much like her. Henry walked over, looking tired. "Miss Dawson, I need to apologize." "For what?" she asked. "I turned Samuel Finch away 6 months ago," he said, full of regret. "If I had listened, this might have been avoided. Or you would be dead and Vernon would have won," Clara replied gently. "You helped when it counted. That is what matters." He looked at her with newfound respect. "You are a remarkable woman, Clara." "I am trying to be," she said. Josiah came to her side. "How are you holding up?" Her body ached and her throat was sore, but she felt lighter than she had in years. "I am okay," she said. "I really am." He looked just as tired, covered in dirt and gunpowder. "What now?" she asked. "My barn is gone," he said after a moment. "The house is likely damaged. I have about 6 months of work ahead of me." He paused. "I could use a hand if you are interested." Her heart lifted. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Mercer?" "I am offering you a home, Miss Dawson, if you want it." She thought of the 4 years she had lost to fear. Then she thought of all she had gained, including this quiet good man who had risked his life for a stranger in a snowstorm. "Yes," she said softly. "I want it." His expression softened into something that was almost a smile. "Good," he said. "We can start tomorrow." Tomorrow, Clara agreed, and for the first time in 4 years, she looked forward to it. An hour later, Martha Jennings rode up in a cart full of supplies. "I heard you 2 fools got into a gunfight," she announced. "I figured you could use some breakfast." She saw Clara, exhausted and stained with blood, and wrapped her in a tight hug. "You did it, girl. You really did it." Clara finally let the tears come. "I could not have done it without you." "Nonsense," Martha said, her own eyes wet. "You had it in you all along. We just gave you a little push." She turned to Josiah. "And you? 12 years of moping around this ranch, and it takes one lost girl to remind you. what living feels like. Josiah's face was a stone, but Clara swore she saw a touch of warmth rise in his cheeks. "I was not moping," he stated. "You surely were," Martha said, patting his arm. "But we forgive you. Now come on and eat before this food gets cold." So they all sat down together. Clara, Josiah, Martha, Henry, and the deputies shared a breakfast as the sun climbed the sky. It was the most unusual meal Clara had ever known, sitting in a cabin riddled with bullet holes. Yet it was also the best, because she was alive and finally home. After they ate, Henry took Clara aside. "There is going to be a trial," he told her. "Douglas Crane's lawyers will fight this hard. They will try to tear you down." "I understand," she said. "It could take months. Are you ready for that?" Clara thought about the courtroom, the stairs, the judgment. "Yes," she said, I am ready." Henry gave a firm nod. "Good. I will be in touch." He then walked off to join his deputies. As Clara watched them ride away, Josiah came and stood beside her. "Are you sure about this? A trial will be a heavy burden." "I know," Clara answered, turning to him. "But if I do nothing, men like him will just keep hurting people. They will keep buying their way out of trouble and ruining lives. You cannot save the whole world." "No," Clara said, her voice firm. "But I can save one person, and maybe that is enough." Josiah studied her for a long moment. "You have changed," he said softly, "from the girl I first found." "Have I?" "You were near death in my barn, scared and ready to give up." He paused. "Just look at you now." Clara knew he was right. The woman who had stumbled through that blizzard felt like a different person. "You changed me," she said. "You, Martha, and Henry showed me what I could do." "No," Josiah said, shaking his head. "We just gave you a chance. You did all the hard work yourself." Clara offered a genuine smile, the first she could remember in a long time. "Well, thank you for the chance." Josiah tipped his hat. "Come on," he said. "We have a ranch to put back together." They walked toward the horses, leaving the ruined cabin in their past. The snow was finally melting, and the first signs of spring were pushing through the hard ground. A new season was beginning, and Clara Mae Dawson was ready for it. The trial started 6 weeks later. Clara stood on the courthouse steps, her hands clasped tightly. The brick building seemed enormous. People hurried past, their eyes lingering on her face. The newspapers had made sure everyone knew her story. They called her the runaway wife, the woman who took down an empire. Some called her a victim, others a villain. She had read the kind words and the cruel ones. She had learned to let them go. Words had no power to hurt her anymore. "Are you ready?" Josiah asked, appearing beside her. Clara took a deep breath. "No, but I am going in anyway." "That is the spirit." They climbed the steps together. The courtroom was overflowing with people lining the walls, and reporters ready with their notepads. At the front, Douglas Crane sat with 3 lawyers in fancy suits. He looked smaller than she remembered. Jail had worn down his arrogance. But when their eyes met, she saw the same cold hatred. Clara held his gaze without flinching, until he was the one to look away. It was a small victory, but it felt important. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. The prosecution started their case. They presented her journal, page by page. They brought in witnesses who told stories of Crane's cruelty. Each person's testimony added another stone to the wall closing in around Douglas Crane. Clara watched it all unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. It was really happening. Finally, it was her turn to speak. Clara walked to the stand on shaky legs. She put her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor, a man named Harrison, approached her kindly. "Miss Dawson, tell the court how you met Vernon Hatch." Clara's voice was strong. "I was 18 years old. My father owed Mr. Hatch money from gambling. Mr. Hatch offered to cancel the debt if I would marry him. Murmurs went through the crowd. And what was that marriage like? Clara paused for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was clear. It was 4 years of misery. She told them everything, from the bruises to the isolation. She described the night she saw Vernon hurt Mary Ellen and knew she had to escape. The courtroom fell completely silent. When she was done, Harrison said, "Thank you, Miss Dawson." Then Douglas Crane's lawyer, a man named Whitmore, stood up. He had a face that looked like it had never known kindness. "Miss Dawson," he started, his voice full of fake concern. "That is quite a story you have told us. It is the truth. Is it?" Whitmore began to walk back and forth. "You say you were sold, but you signed a legal marriage contract, did you not?" "I was 18. I did not understand it." "But you did sign it," he pressed. "I was not given another choice." Whitmore's smile was cold. "You claim Mr. Hatch was cruel, but you never once went to the law. Why not?" "Because Vernon controlled my entire world. I had no one to help me." "Or perhaps," Whitmore leaned in, "the cruelty never happened. Perhaps you made it all up to justify running away from your husband." "That is not true," Clara said, her anger rising. Whitmore turned to the jury. "We only have this woman's word. There are no witnesses, just the claims of a woman who ran from her duties." "My duties?" Clara's voice grew louder. "I was his property, not his wife. Being legal does not make it right. I was bought and sold. I was punished for speaking. He told me every single day that I was worthless and that no one would ever believe me." She was shaken like a leaf in a high wind, and he was almost right. Men like him, with all their money and high-dollar lawyers, they spent ages making sure women like me kept their mouths shut. The courtroom went wild. The judge hammered his gavel. "Miss Dawson, you will sit down." "No." Clara's voice sliced right through the racket. "I was quiet for 4 long years. I am done being quiet." She turned to the jury. "I am not asking for your pity. I am asking you to look at the proof. The journal, the folks who saw what happened, the pure cruelty in everything Douglas Crane and Vernon Hatch ever put their hands on." Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "I am asking you to believe me, not because I am a woman, but because I am telling the God's honest truth." Then she sat, and a hush fell over the room. Whitmore just stood there, his big attack plan all blown away. "No more questions," he mumbled. The judge called for a break. Clara walked out on legs that felt like jelly. Josiah was right there waiting. "You did real good in there," he said. Clara slumped against the wall, her heart still pounding. "I just lost my temper." "You told the truth," Josiah said, handing her some water. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Martha came pushing through the crowd, her eyes wet but a smile on her face. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen. Every woman in there was pulling for you." Clara just shook her head. "The jury is all men." "Men have mamas and sisters," Martha said, squeezing her hand. "You got through to them, Clara. I know you did." The trial went on for 3 more days. Crane's friends swore he was a good man. Lawyers claimed the journal was a fake. But Clara had said her piece. She stayed quiet and listened. On the 4th day, the jury went to decide. Clara, Josiah, and Martha waited in the hall. "How long you reckon they will be?" Clara asked Sheriff Dalton. He just shrugged. "Could be hours, could be days." "What if they say he is not guilty?" The sheriff's jaw set hard. "Then we appeal. We keep fighting. And if that does not work," he met her gaze, "at least we stood up. Sometimes that is all a person can do." Clara nodded. She knew he was right. Justice was never a sure thing. But she had done all she could. She had spoken her truth. Whatever came next, she could live with it. The jury came back in 4 hours. The foreman, an old rancher, stood up on the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud. The foreman read out, "We find the defendant, Douglas Crane, guilty." The room just exploded. On the charge of bribery, we find the defendant guilty. Clara grabbed Josiah's hand. On the charge of accessory to murder, we find the defendant guilty. Tears just poured down Clara's face. On all other charges, we find the defendant guilty. Douglas Crane turned pale as a ghost. His lawyers started hollering, but the judge slammed his gavel. Douglas Crane, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in the territorial prison. Guards moved in and Crane fought them, screaming, "This is not over." But it was. They dragged him out, and then there was just silence. Josiah put a hand on her shoulder. "It is done," he said softly. "You won." Clara looked up at him, the tears still falling. "We won," she whispered. That night they gathered at Martha's house. It was a quiet kind of celebration with Clara, Josiah, Henry, and the deputies. Henry raised his glass. "To Clara, the toughest woman in the whole Wyoming territory." "To Clara," they all said. Clara blushed. "I just told the truth." "Sometimes," Josiah said, his voice low. "That is the hardest thing in the world to do." Martha squeezed her hand. "Your story's going to help other women, you know. They will hear what you did, and they will find their own backbone." Clara had not thought of that. The papers were already calling her a symbol of change. "I do not want to be a symbol," she said. "I just want to live." "Then live," Martha told her. "Living well is the best revenge of all." For the first time in ages, Clara felt a real smile spread across her face. Later, she stood outside under the big sky. A year ago, she was a prisoner. Now, she was free. Josiah came and stood beside her. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. "Too much on my mind." They were quiet for a spell. "What will you do now?" he asked. She had been so focused on just staying alive, she had not thought about what came after. "I do not know," she said. "I have never gotten to choose what I want before." "Well," Josiah said gently, "you have got all the time in the world to figure it out. Nobody is chasing you anymore." Those words sank in slow, like a good rain on dry ground. Nobody is chasing you anymore. She was truly free. "There is something I want to do," she said. "When I was with Vernon, he would not let me read or write. Said an educated woman was a dangerous thing." Josiah's face hardened, but he let her talk. "I want to teach," Clara went on. "Teach reading and writing to women and children who never had the chance. I want to give them the one thing Vernon tried to steal from me." Josiah looked at her, and a slow smile spread across his weathered face. "That is a fine dream, Clara. A worthy one. You think I can do it?" "Clara May Dawson," he said, his voice firm as an old oak tree. "You survived a monster and brought down two powerful men. You stood up and told your truth to the whole world. There is not a thing you cannot do." Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they were happy tears. "Thank you, Josiah, for everything." "Do not thank me," he said, looking at the stars. "You saved yourself." The school opened 6 months later. It was not easy. Some folks thought she was aiming too high. But for every person against her, 3 more were for her. The women of Stillwater Creek knew her story, and they respected what she was building. On opening day, 12 students were there. 7 women from 18 to 62, and 5 little ones. Her heart was pounding like a drum. Martha was one of the students. "Do not be nervous," she whispered. "You're going to be a wonder." Clara took a deep breath and walked to the front of the room. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Clara May Dawson." She turned and wrote 2 words on the board. "You matter." "This is the most important thing I will ever teach you," she said, looking at each of their faces. "No matter what anyone has ever told you, you matter. Your voice matters, your mind matters, and your future matters." Her own voice grew with passion. "They tried to keep me small and quiet, and for a long time I let them. But I'm not small anymore. And when I am done with y'all, you will not be either." The women looked at her with a new kind of hope in their eyes. Clara smiled. "Now let us begin, model," from her own small cabin on Josiah's land, and watch the sun go down. Her school now had 27 students. 3 of the first women she taught were now helping her teach the others. The children were doing well, discovering talents no one knew they had. Clara had even published her story in a newspaper back east. The editor praised her resilience. Letters arrived from all over the country from women who shared their own difficult stories. They thanked her for giving them hope. Clara knew she could not save them all, but she could show them that a different life was possible. That was enough for her. Josiah walked up from the barn, his limp a little worse in the evening chill. He looked older, with more gray in his hair, but a new lightness was in his eyes. He had found a new purpose helping Clara with the school. "Martha is coming for dinner," he announced. "She's bringing her apple pie." "I will set another plate." Josiah sat in the chair next to her, and they watched the colors of the sky change. "I received a letter from Samuel Finch today," Clara said. "He made it to California and has a good job. He says he is happy." Josiah nodded. "Good. He deserves it." They sat in a comfortable quiet for a time. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened?" Clara asked. "If you had not found me that night?" Josiah thought about it. "Sometimes," he said, "when I cannot sleep." "What do you think?" "I think you would have died in that barn," he said, his voice plain and honest. "I would have found you in the spring when the snow melted. And I would have buried you, never even knowing your name." Clara felt a shiver run through her. "But that is not what happened," Josiah said softly. "You lived, you fought, and you won." He looked right at her. "The past does not matter, Clara. Only what you do now." Clara nodded. He was right. She had spent far too long haunted by what was done to her. It was time to look ahead. "I was thinking," she said, "about making the school bigger, maybe teaching in other towns, or even starting a fund to help women get out of bad situations. That is a mighty big dream. You told me I could do anything." A small smile touched Josiah's face. "I suppose I did say that. Were you lying to me?" "No." He looked at her with pure pride. "I was not lying." Martha came in with a pie and a basket of warm bread. They all ate together under the stars, talking and laughing just like a real family. After they finished, Martha pulled Clara aside. "I have something for you," she said, handing her a small package wrapped in brown paper. Clara opened it. Inside was a fine leather journal with her initials on the cover. "For your thoughts," Martha said. "Your stories, your dreams." Clara's eyes welled up with tears. "Martha, it is beautiful. You have a lot of life left to live," Martha told her. "A lot of stories to tell. This is only the beginning." Clara hugged her. Later that night, Clara sat at her desk and opened the journal. She picked up a pen and started to write. "My name is Clara Mae Dawson. I was born in Missouri, sold in St. Louis, and born again in Wyoming. This is the story of how I came back to life." The words flowed out of her for hours. All the pain, all the fear, and all the strength she never knew she had. When she finally finished, the sun was coming up. Clara closed the journal and looked out her window. The world was waking up. Birds were singing and cattle were lowing. It was the sound of life just going on. She thought about the girl she used to be. The one who had crawled through a blizzard with just a knife and a prayer dress. The girl who had been shattered, who thought she could never be whole again, was gone. In her place stood a woman, a teacher, and a survivor, a voice for all the women who had been silenced. Clara Mae Dawson stepped outside into the warm morning light. She could see Josiah by the barn, tending to the horses. Martha's cart was rattling up the road. In town, her students were getting ready for another day of learning. This was her family, her town, her home. A year later, A stranger rode into Stillwater Creek asking for the teacher who helped women find a new start. He found Clara in the schoolhouse surrounded by students, her face alive with passion as she taught a lesson. She looked up as he entered. "Can I help you?" The stranger took off his hat. He was a young man, barely 30, with kind eyes and fidgeting hands. "My name is James Porter," he said. "Mary Ellen Porter is my sister." Clara froze right where she stood. "He told me everything you did for her," James went on. "He said you tried to help her, and that your escape gave the law the proof they needed to find her." His voice trembled with emotion. "She is alive today because of you, Miss Dawson. She wanted me to find you and thank you." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. "She also wanted me to give you this." He handed her a folded letter. Clara took it with shaking hands. "Dear Clara," it began, "I do not know if you will ever get this, but I had to try. The doctors say I am going to be okay. They say the scars will fade and the nightmares will end. I am starting to believe them. I am starting to believe I have a future, all because of you. You showed me a person can survive, fight back, and even win. I hope to be as brave as you one day. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for proving that monsters can be beaten. Love, Mary Ellen." Clara clutched the letter to her heart. All the pain and all the fear had been worth it. Every single second. James joined them for supper that evening. He told them how Mary Ellen was recovering, about her new job and her plans. "She's thinking of becoming a nurse," he said, "to help other women who have been hurt." "She talks about you constantly," James told Clara. "She calls you her guardian angel." Clara just shook her head. "I am no angel. I was just a woman who got lucky." "No." Josiah's voice was low and steady. "You were not lucky. You were strong." Clara looked at the man who had become her father and her friend. "We are all strong," she said softly. "We just sometimes need someone to help us see it." Josiah held up his glass. "To strength," he said, "and to the people who help us find it." "To strength," they all repeated. They drank as the firelight danced across their faces. Outside, the wind rustled the cottonwood trees. A new season was beginning. And Clara Mae Dawson, who had once fled into a blizzard with only a knife and a prayer, was finally home. She had once been treated like property. She had been a victim. She had been a runaway and a witness. But now she was so much more. She was a teacher, a fighter, a survivor. She was free, and no one was ever going to take that away from her again.